Hello and welcome to yet another carefree episode of the Audiophile Man. Now, this is a long video, so make yourself comfortable. If you want to skip around the video, look below in the description. I have all kinds of timestamps and you can knock yourself out with all of those. This week then, I'm looking at a new vinyl cleaner from Germany, actually from Knosti, the same people who make the Disco Antistat. This is an ultrasonic cleaner called, surprise, surprise, the Disco Antistat Ultrasonic. Priced in Europe at €1,249. I've seen various prices in the UK ranging from, I don't know, 1,149, 1,059 from hi-fi retailers, possibly even lower on eBay, so shop around. Knosti is apparently in talks with US distributors, so stay tuned for news on that. The Disco Antistat Ultrasonic combines both internally fitted ultrasonic technology plus its famed goat hair brushes. And those brushes are also fitted inside the bath here to provide two types of abrasion to clean your vinyl. The chassis itself, which spans 360mm by 180 by 235mm and weighs around 2.6 kilograms with a bath full of cleaning liquid, has a look of the original Disco Antistat manual vinyl cleaner. You're even given a spindle clamp to protect your records label during cleaning, which only adds to the family resemblance. Now, before we do some actual cleaning, let's take a quick tour around the chassis. First up is, yes, that chassis itself, which combines the cleaning bath and the interface. This ABS chassis is chunky and solid. Now, I've seen internet criticism of this chassis. Some users of the earlier models discovered cracks in the chassis itself. Knosti told me, though, that they've since made improvements, so that problem should be a thing of the past. Looking at the front of the chassis, you will see a central information window. Small it might be, but it does the job. This is where you can set the cleaning program up to a total of 5 minutes per cleaning cycle. Knosti recommend between 60 seconds and 2 minutes, but I opted for the full 5 minutes every time. I felt the increase in sound quality was well worth it. That time can be altered via 2 arrow buttons to the left of the window, up and down. To the right is a power button. You depress that button for 5 seconds to switch the unit on or off. You also get a drain button, again triggered after a 5-second press. That removes the liquid from the bath when required. On the opposite side of the chassis, you'll find a click-out hatch. That contains both the bath liquid drain tube and the cleaning filter. The filter keeps the bath water clean during operation. This filter can be removed, disassembled, and itself cleaned under running water before being replaced back into the rear of the machine. The only other point of note is to the right of the Disco Antistat Ultrasonic. That's where you'll find the power socket, in this case a barrel connector. My main design issue centers here. The power lead is not long enough in my opinion. The current lead spans around a meter long. I would have preferred at least 2, preferably 3 meters in length for easy location of the chassis. Apart from the bath unit and the power supply, in the box you will find a pair of goat hair brushes which you have to install into the bath. A basic operation, you just slide the brushes into place along the available rails within. You'll also find a drying rack plus a sponge on a stick. This simple tool allows you to periodically clean the bath itself. You'll also find an empty plastic bottle, a bottle of cleaning concentrate, and a bottle of distilled water. Following these simple instructions, you combine the concentrate and the water in the now no longer empty bottle. Then you give the whole thing a shake and dispense the now diluted cleaning liquid into the machine's bath. Looking inside, you'll find a max level marker in the bath so you can't overfill. Now it's time to grab your mucky record. Fans of the manual Disco Antistat will know that the clamp needs to be fitted onto the vinyl. But Viewers of my recent Mark II Plus review of that same Disco Antistat will also know that you will need to firstly remove the two rubber seals situated on the inside of the clamp halves themselves. See my review link above for the drama, the controversy, the blood, the screams, all of that. Once the clamp is firmly affixed to the vinyl itself, you lower the record into the ultrasonic cleaner's bath. Make sure the cogged side of the clamp is facing to the rear, facing away from you, because that will mesh and connect via the built-in magnet to the motor. And the motor, incidentally, is supplied by the German engineering company Bosch. Just push the clamp towards this connection, rotate the record to engage and lock, and you're done. Next, press the up arrow button to start the cleaning process, and the ultrasonic transducers will kick in and the vinyl will rotate. And while we're on the subject of transducers, I asked Knosti about the frequency rate of these transducers, and the company said the rate is 46 kilohertz. Any lower, said the company, and cleaning effectiveness would have been compromised. Any higher, and the heat output generated would have been too high for this particular design. And well, I can understand that. Cleaning progress, well, that's monitored by an arc of lights that you'll see at the front of the chassis. In operation, well, you can certainly hear the cleaning process, but it's not too loud. I've heard far worse, especially from vacuum-based RCMs. Now, once the cleaning cycle has been completed, twist the clamp slightly anti-clockwise to disengage the motor cog. Lift the record out of the bath, drip dry just a little bit to remove the excess water back into the bath, remove the clamp, and store in the rack to dry. Which means, of course, there is no internal drying cycle or automatic internal water pump. Drying, as I say, is a manual operation. Again, I asked Knosti why, and it stated that the current chassis design cannot accommodate that process. And before you object, just remember that adding a drying cycle and all of the hardware that would have entailed would have significantly increased the price point of this machine. I also do know a few people who really don't like the idea of internal dryers on ultrasonic machines, so they'll be happy, I'm sure. And that's the basic tech. So, how does this cleaner perform? And when the vinyl is cleaned, how does that vinyl sound? For testing, I grabbed an original pressing of the Throwing Muses album University on the 4AD label, and I played the track Bright Yellow Gun. Wholly uncleaned, dusty, and rather mucky, this LP was an addition to my collection that I've yet to get around to listening to, and of course, I haven't yet cleaned the thing, so it was a perfect target. Nicely engineered with plenty of inherent clarity, it's a high-energy piece with a female vocal, tambourine drums, bass, and electric guitar. Simple, straightforward, except for some double-tracked vocals dotted throughout. To begin, I wanted to address and test the supplied cleaning liquid. Hence, I cleaned the LP for a total of 5 minutes in the Disco Antistat Ultrasonic. In the bath was a diluted solution of the supplied Knosti cleaning liquid. Now, that concentrate was diluted not with Knosti's distilled water, but with my own. Why? Well, because I would need the same distilled water for future tests, and I didn't want to use multiple variants of the stuff, adding even minor doubt to my test results. Hence, the water became a constant, not a variable. And as a general point, when you hear me talking about testing and cleaning, I will always finish the cleaning cycle or cycles with a rinse. That will be a given. I might not mention it, but that's a given. So the sonic result of using the ultrasonic cleaner with the Knosti liquid, a definite improvement in sound quality from the original dirty LP that I pulled out of the sleeve. The entire soundstage of this LP increased in size. In fact, It was much more open now, spacious. The vocals offered a larger and more imposing performance. From an already impressive degree of clarity, the Knosti improved that element of the sound still further, with shy instruments like the tambourine now more visible to the ear. Next, well, I wanted to see how far I could push the performance both of the Knosti machine and the inherent Knosti liquid. To remind you, I had initially run the machine across a single 5-minute cycle. I decided to up that to 6 5-minute cycles to see if anything had changed. I was hoping it would. The idea being that this would see the performance levels hit a sort of plateau. That is, any further cleans after 6 cycles would either bring little or no real improvement. And indeed, that seemed to be the case. So I played the same track and compared the sound between a single 5-minute cycle and 6 5-minute cycles. The result? Well, further improvements. This time, there was an increase in focus and solidity around the stereo image. There was no wavering of vocals and instruments in this area. And there was a little bit earlier on, so that's gone now. Lead vocals sounded meaner, drums had extra punch, while the bass overall was firmer and more precise. And a slight tangent now for those familiar with the liquid supplied with the low-cost manual Disco Antistat, and the habit of that liquid to form a kind of gungy residue that builds up and has built up across the stylus tip. Now, despite assurances from Knosti that the concentrate liquid is exactly the same liquid as the other liquid supplied with the manual machine, which is pre-diluted, my concentrate version did not form residue buildups on the stylus. Why? Well, after talking to Knosti, that might be because the water in the ultrasonic machine is being constantly filtered. That seems to make all the difference with the supplied liquid. So that's something to bear in mind if you buy this machine, especially if you may have had a bad experience with the pre-diluted manual version. Back to this review, and next, well, I wanted to compare the Knosti liquid with my own system. That is, filling the bath with distilled water and adding 7% alcohol, plus adding diluted tergitol surfactant with added glycol, applied directly to the vinyl surface with the aid of a kabuki brush. Now, if any of that raises eyebrows or sparks confusion, and I'm sure it will if this is the first time you heard me talk about this, if all of that triggers questions, check out the cleaning guide, which I will link down below in the description. That should answer all of those questions. If you have any questions after reading that guide, give me a shout. So I wanted to use my system and compare it with the supplied Knosti liquid. I wanted to see if there was any differences. Now, Knosti will no doubt react, what's the word, badly, I suppose, to me placing alcohol in their cleaning bath, even at this low amount of 7%. Knosti advises against using it and declares that you should only use the Knosti cleaning liquid. Now, is that because they want you to buy their cleaning liquid only to maximize their profits? Possibly. To be frank, I would do that if I was in their shoes. Or is that because they want to keep within their own warranty guarantee? Again, possibly. But look, I heard similar language from Audiodesk when I used my alcohol-based liquids in their Pro Ultrasonic Cleaner. And I did that for what, 2 years? More? Without any adverse effects, I might add. So I'll take my chances here, especially if the sound improves. To remind ourselves then, the test disc had been cleaned over 6 5-minute cycles in the ultrasonic cleaner using the Knosti concentrated liquid in my distilled water. At that point, I drained that Knosti liquid away. I cleaned the bath with distilled water. I replaced that water with my own bath liquid recipe. Then I applied my diluted surfactant to the vinyl surface for just a single 5-minute cycle. And then I listened to see if I could hear any differences. And well, yes, I certainly could. Via my concoction, the vocal was now a step nearer to the ear, larger in size and more expressive. Instruments now had gaps in between each, mandating that more fine detail could be heard. More business on the drums could be tracked. The tambourine was clearer. Cymbals offered better treble insight. Overall, the music was tonally more realistic. Comparing my system with the Knosti Liquid, well, if anything, the Knosti Liquid added a slice of artificial bass emphasis that reminded me a little of the performance I've heard from the Triton surfactant that I tested a while back. Link above if you want to check that out. Now, I don't know if Triton is part of the Knosti mix. I know Knosti does use a surfactant of some sort, which in particular, they're not telling me. It's a bit of a secret. However, that's what I heard. And whatever the answer, the Tergitol and alcohol application provided to my ears better balance and neutrality, plus better detail right across the frequency spectrum. Hence, that's the liquid I decided to use for the rest of this test. Next up, I wanted to test the new ultrasonic cleaner with Knosti's original manual Disco Antistat. So I grabbed an original pressing of the Golden Palominos Drunk with Passion. Does anyone out there remember the Golden Palominos? And I cleaned the LP in Knosti's famed manual cleaner, the Disco Antistat. As I say, I wanted to see if there was a performance difference between it and the new ultrasonic machine, and if so, how. To confirm, I used my liquid system, so the same type of liquids, the same surfactant technique, the same type of bath water, and I rotated the record in the Disco Antistat bath, the manual version, 30 times clockwise and 30 times anti-clockwise, and then I removed the record and allowed that cleaned record to dry. That was one cycle. I cleaned the record, actually spanning 6 of those cycles to again achieve some sort of performance plateau. And then I listened, and then I cleaned the same record in the Knosti ultrasonic cleaner as earlier with my liquid system via a one single 5-minute cycle to see if there was any improvement in terms of sound. Now on the Golden Palominos LP, I listened to the track Alive and Living Now, a production with wide open spaces, various electric guitars, bass and airy sound to the drums, plus noticeable cymbal work, male lead vocal, and ethereal female backing, plus backing harmonies. So after cleaning with the new Knosti ultrasonic cleaner, well, even more air was pushed into the soundstage, which increased in size left and right. It sounded actually like the band were playing in the middle of the prairies now. Such was the spacious feeling to the sound. The lead vocal now had a kind of reverb bubble surrounding it, while there was a greater balance to the overall presentation in tonal terms. After the Disco Antistat clean, there was still a slight edge to the upper mids. That had gone now with the new ultrasonic cleaner. Backing harmonies sounded richer, the female backing sounded softer, while the drums had a large epic presentation. In general sonic terms, the ultrasonic cleaner was a few rungs up the ladder from the manual Disco Antistat. Next, I wanted to test the Knosti Disco Antistat Ultrasonic with a good quality RCM, a vacuum-based cleaner. And I picked the best RCM I have ever heard, I have ever used. This one is from Lorrycraft, rather expensive. I don't know how much they are these days, £4,500, something in that area. Again, same liquid types and quantities were used to maintain that constant, and I used a surfactant when cleaning with my Lorrycraft. This time my test LP was the original Verve pressing of Mel Torme and the Meltones, the album Back in Town, and the track it happened in Monterey. On this track, the stereo image was filled by Torme's vocal, plus the massed harmonic ranks of the meltones, plus drums. To the left and right was brass, electric guitar, bass and vibes, plus the odd bit of cymbals, and of all things, a cowbell. To clean on the RCM, I used the famous bow technique. That is, flooding the horizontal vertical surface with a cleaning liquid, in this case my Tergitol-based liquid, applying the Loricraft brush to the now rotating platter, and creating a wave-like bow on the vinyl surface, which served to dislodge and remove grime from the groove as the bow wave agitated that very groove. I used this technique while rotating the platter clockwise and then anti-clockwise. I then dried the vinyl surface, and that served as a single cycle. Again, I wanted to push the Loricraft to a plateau so that my test record was no longer improving in sound terms with subsequent cleans. Again, 6 cycles seem to be the ideal figure here. So I sound tested that result and then cleaned the record in the Knosti Ultrasonic Cleaner for a single cycle, just to hear any possible sonic changes. As for that sound, well, my first note was the increase in volume for the same gain setting, so I had to reduce the gain by a click. I then noticed the enhanced clarity in comparison to the Loricraft. The soundstage really did sound scrubbed, dusted, polished, and thoroughly pristine. The treble output around the cymbals offered a brassy ting when struck. Vocals seemingly had a boost in pace and zip, while bass offered a new focus. Finally, in this test, I wanted to put the Knosti into some sort of context, so I decided to compare it with another ultrasonic machine, in this case the Degritter Mk.Ii, a machine that costs around, what, just over 2.5 times the price, at somewhere over £2,500. This time I did a bit of a switcheroo and I cleaned my test vinyl in the Knosti for 6 complete cycles to reach that familiar sound quality plateau. That is, I applied my diluted surfactant to the vinyl surface with a kabuki brush, cleaned for 5 minutes as one cycle, but proceeded to complete 6 cycles in total. So I listened to the result of that. And then I cleaned the vinyl in my Degritter Mk.Ii for a single heavy cycle, and that spanned something like 13 minutes, partly because there was a built-in drying cycle in that 13 minutes. So to repeat, that was one cycle. I stayed with the one single cycle, and I listened to see if there was any differences in sound. For this test LP, I chose Sarah Vaughan and Ronnie Scott's Presents Volume 2 on the Pi label, and I played the track Blue Skies. Vaughan was backed by a piano, upright bass, and a stick and brush-based percussion. Now, it was not surprising to hear a devastating sense of imagery from the Degritter, and in all directions. There was a real 3D picture created by the Degritter from front to back, from top to bottom, enhanced bass, and the final high-pitched crescendo from Vaughan revealed a more recognizable and balanced vibrato. Despite all of that, though, these were luxury fiddly bits. Impressive, yes. Stunning even, definitely. And yes, the Knosti could not compete on those terms. But even so, the Knosti, for the price, and let's remember that price because it is critical, was now even more impressive after hearing the Degritter, because all of the basics were covered by the Knosti machine. All of the important bases were touched upon. Every frequency was enhanced. Discipline was enhanced as well. Clarity was up, detail, transparency too. All were there. For the asking price, the Knosti performed superbly. And that's basically the review of the Disco Antistat Ultrasonic Vinyl Cleaner. Let me give you a few final thoughts. I'll offer a few pros and cons, and give you a final rating. I have to say that I was very happy with the Knosti Ultrasonic Vinyl Cleaner. It offered a pleasing familiarity in terms of its aesthetics, looking very much like the excellent Disco Antistat, the manual version. The interface on the Ultrasonic was easy to use and worked very well. Potentially troublesome operations like draining the bath were easy to accomplish, as was the filter cleaning. And while the use of cavitation and the internally fitted brushes may seem to some like overkill, this double action did prove to work very well indeed in terms of vinyl cleaning. And as for the sound, well, top notch, especially if you run it with a good preparation treatment. I rate the Knosti Ultrasonic Cleaner above any manual system you can care to mention. I also rate it above any RCM vacuum system you care to mention, and many competing ultrasonic cleaners too. Of the units I have personally reviewed, I haven't reviewed all of them, most of them I would say, of those only the much more expensive Degritter can really challenge it. If you are looking for a high quality ultrasonic vinyl cleaner and you're happy to invest the money into that problem, but you don't want to spend too much cash, then as far as I am concerned, the Knosti Ultrasonic Cleaner is the only choice on the market. It's a brilliant little machine. Pros and cons. And in the good section, well, this little machine is little. It's compact. And that is a bit of a surprise, especially when you look at some of the rather more bulkier and large footprint models on the market. The Knosti machine is easy to use. You can get up and running very quickly indeed. In operation, it's relatively quiet. It's not silent by any means, but it's not too noisy either. And finally, and most importantly, in my particular opinion, sound quality. It really does enhance the sound of your vinyl because it cleans it very well. And in the bad section, well, it's a bit of a niggly irritation, really, rather than a major flaw, and it's the length of the power cable. It needs to be longer, in my opinion. Hence, the final rating is not going to be really damaged by that. And I'm looking at an award-winning rating and a rather rare, deeply groovy 9 out of 10. Congratulations to Knosti. And that's a lot, folks. Thank you very much for staying to the end of this video. Before you go, can you click on the like and subscribe buttons, please? I'd appreciate that very much indeed. Helps the old channel to sail through the algorithm and all that jazz. Further down, I'll put a link to my vinyl cleaning system guide thing. You'll find that on my website. I'll put a link down below. I'll also put a link to the Knosti website. That'll be down there too. And this machine. I'll also add some of my own links to my website, and there are other reviews of other vinyl cleaners, including ultrasonic cleaners over there. To my Patreon page, of course, which includes buyer's guide information, all kinds of features, exclusive stuff, tours, and the weekly hi-fi news, etc. video. Also a link to my Facebook group, which you're welcome to join. Now, I'll be back next week with a music alerts video on a Friday, I think. I'd love to have your company. Until then, folks, bye-bye for now.